The beauty.
Tonight on Greater Boston, while Massachusetts Democrats are on track to sweep today's election and bring the state back to single-party rule, Democrats on the national stage are bracing to lose power in Congress, and Donald Trump is a week away from being in it to win it. My radio co-host Margery Eagen, Boston Globe editorial page editor James Braude, and State Senator Lydia Edwards join me on the implications of it all. And later, an Election Day palate cleanser, chef owner Jamie Mammano of Ostra, we just got a 5-star review from the Boston Globe. As we near closing time for polls here in Massachusetts, at the time of this taping, unless there's a massive come-from-behind upset, Democrats look very likely to sweep 5, if not all 6, of the statewide races and make history in the process. With Maura Healey, who'll be the first woman elected governor in the state and the first out gay woman governor in U.S. history. Andrea Campbell is poised to become the first black woman elected to statewide office, with a likely win for Attorney General. Democrats are expected to maintain control of the State House and Senate, too. But as for Democrats in D.C., the future, at least in the House, appears bleak. Joining me to discuss the implications of tonight's elections locally and nationally are Boston Globe editorial page editor James Braude, State Senator Lydia Edwards of Boston, and the co-host of my favorite radio show, Boston Public Radio, Margery Eagen. Welcome to all three of you. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Jim, let me start with you. In your endorsement of Republican Anthony Amore for auditor, you said, having a reasonable Republican matters. Even if he wins, he's likely to be the only reasonable Republican in any high place in Massachusetts government. Does that matter?
Well, we thought it mattered because Massachusetts has a great history of having divided government, and where typically the legislature has been Democratic and several governors have been Republican, and it's worked often quite well, where they've checked each other and balanced each other, and you've gotten a diversity of positions and policies as a result.
But can an auditor check anybody when the Democratic legislature controls his budget?
Well, I think that's a fair question, for sure. But he is in a position to, to make independent audits, to have a fair degree of critical independence from sort of the standing power structure of Beacon Hill. And that seemed, like something. That seemed like a plus.
Till they stop paying his rent, at least, and then it's all.
I'd be amazed if they did that.
I wouldn't. You're a pretty big-time Democrat. Are you worried about a wall-to-wall Democratic one-party state in terms of small d democracy?
No.
Why not?
Well, because I think there's a big tent in the Democratic Party, number one. And number two, I have found that, you see the diversity. You see that we don't always agree, and you see that we push back and forth, and policies have still to get hashed out. I'm more concerned, honestly, about, speaking of the auditor's race and speaking of Mr. Amore, I'm more concerned about someone who has never challenged, pushed, blown up, screamed, or been and demonstrated any kind of fearlessness.
You're a big-time DeZoglio supporter,
I am,
we should say.
Because she is unafraid, and she is a Democrat, and some of her biggest criticisms have been for other Democrats.
We're about to have, unless there's some shock, we're about to have the most diverse set of constitutional officers in every way I described before, I'm sure more, we ever had. How does that translate into everyday management of state government, do you think?
Well, I mean, by diversity, we're talking about perspective, not just gender and race, right? And background, and how they're going to see how government impacts all of us differently. That's huge.
Margery, and if Maura Healey governs as she ran, I think there's potential for at least a little bit of Charlie Baker 2.0. We discussed on the radio today, my thesis is the reason the legislature killed the tax cut, Baker's tax cut, is so Maura Healey can do the tax cut as one of her first acts. And she obviously has a different position on question 1. And question 4, do you see her as Charlie Baker 2.0, or is that unfair?
Well, I think I think it was very smart politics, since Charlie Baker was so popular, to be out in the campaign trail as Baker 2.0. But I think she's going to be different. She's going to be much more aggressive, I hope, on climate issues. I think that Baker was not as aggressive as he might have been on climate issues. But, I'm old enough to remember when it was a miracle that a woman got elected statewide years ago.
Shannon O'Brien, 20-plus years ago.
Yeah, so
no
I
women
think it's
ever
pretty
before her.
exciting that we have a ticket of women of color. It's pretty unusual here in Massachusetts, where I've lived all my life, and I've never seen this before. So let the women have a chance.
Do you see her as a reiteration of Charlie Baker, Maura Healey?
Not at all.
I mean, she did run in Baker's shadow, for lack of, I wouldn't say shadow, but as Baker. Would you not agree?
No, no, she ran on her record of fighting for things that matter. She ran on fighting against the Sacklers. She ran on fighting for climate change. She ran on the fact that we need a functioning public transportation system. A lot of the issues that Baker did not have to address, she ran and hit them straight on. She didn't run in his shadow. She ran and created, I think, a whole voice and lane for herself.
Do you find that? I mean, I remember a piece in your editorial, or maybe it was a newspaper story. I know Joan Vanocchi repeated today when she was asked the editorial board, how are you going to be different from Charlie Baker? I think I got this right. She said, you know, watch, essentially judge me by what I do. That is what she said to you, right?
It is what she said. It was a little ambiguous as to what she meant by that. But I mean, my sense is that she was just she's a practical, smart politician, and running as someone who likes Charlie Baker, wants to continue Charlie Baker's sort of, tone of politics, makes good political sense. I don't know that it's clear that she would do everything Charlie Baker would do in the same position.
Well, as I said, even on two huge issues, the millionaire's tax and giving unauthorized people, undocumented people a driver's license, two huge questions. She does have a different position. Can we go national for a minute? Here's Barack Obama in, I think it was Pennsylvania on Saturday. Here he is.
Fundamental rights are on the ballot. Truth and facts and logic and reason and basic decency are on the ballot. Democracy itself is on the ballot. The stakes are high.
You know, Jim Braude, you said almost the exact same thing in an editorial. I'll read it to you. What better message can the electorate send than to show the GOP that extremism and election denial will not be tolerated at the ballot? I agree, but that won't be the message that's being sent nationally if the polls are correct. An enabling message, it seems to me, is about to be sent. What is that message exactly that America seems to be sending to its Congress?
Well, I think every midterm elections, the president's party almost always does badly. And I think that's the position Democrats will take, that this would have happened no matter what. And I think that's not a terrible argument. It's history. That's how it's been historically.
But the opposing party has generally not been dominated by election deniers. That's a little bit different from history.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think probably the real answer to that question is that people were focused on issues that the Republicans were talking about too, legitimately or not: immigration, border security, inflation, and the cost of living, and crime. They've hit on crime, and those could well be the more important issues as far as those Republican voters go.
But they're going to claim, assuming that the outcomes are what we think, they take the House, it's unclear what's going to happen in the Senate, they're going to claim a mandate, and I assume they're going to say to themselves in private rooms, we can keep pretending like the election was stolen, and we can get elected doing it. It's a pretty dangerous proposition.
Yeah, they're going to, I think if it goes the way some people are predicting, they're going to feel validated in that nonsense. They're going to feel validated in talking about how the election was stolen and so on and so forth. But what I completely agree with Jim in that the minority or the president's party is likely to lose because they're held responsible for everything that is going on wrong right now. So inflation, if there's issues with the crime, all of these different things they're being held to, and that it's more of a check on that and concern about how they're not addressing that than I really believe anybody is walking into the polls and saying, you know what, 2020 was stolen, that's why I'm voting for a Republican. They're concerned about the fact that gas is expensive.
But they're also not saying 2020 was stolen, and as a result, I won't tolerate it. They are tolerating.
I don't know that they care that much. I think they care about.
That's pretty frightening, isn't it?
It is frightening that message could be validated, but people at the fundamentals want to pay for groceries. They want to pay for supplies. They want to build and buy homes. And if they don't feel that the party that has the control is helping them do that, they'll vote somebody else in.
You know, John King from CNN told us on the radio today that for those who are worried we have to stay up till 4 a.m. or for 4 days, the two races that may tell us a lot, bellwether races, are right to our north. If Bolduc beats Maggie Hassan for the Senate, and this 25-year-old woman, Levitt, who worked for Trump and is an election denier, beats the incumbent Democratic Pappas, a red wave is likely. What worries you most, or what should worry the American people most, in your estimation, Margery, about what Republicans in control in the House and or Senate might do?
Well, I think that it could be a real sideshow of Rand Paul having hearings on Dr. Fauci, Jim Jordan having hearings about Hunter Biden. There could be threats to, they're talking about Medicare and Social Security cuts. I think it's really scary that we're in these two different worlds, and that so many people seem to believe that the election was stolen. They're voting for people who believe the election was stolen. And I know you think this is a ridiculous thing, but we talked about this.
That's a hell of an introduction to a comment. Go ahead.
I found it incredible that Don Bolduc, who's up in New Hampshire, has talked about, and this is kind of an anti-LGBT thing, about there being kitty litter in bathrooms in schools. You're hearing people running for governor around the country talking about this ridiculous notion, and it's like you said, a flying saucer landed in my backyard, and everybody's, okay, a flying saucer landed in your backyard.
It's clearly there are a lot of election deniers, hundreds perhaps, that'll be elected to office across the nation tonight. But you know, those people ran hard on that sort of Trumpian line to win their primaries, right? And many of them backed off some of those positions when they entered the primary season, Don Bolduc among them. And so the question is like, I don't think that, while you have a segment of voters, those Republican primary voters that absolutely hew to the big lie, there's a whole body of independent voters who probably don't, and who are concerned about the issues that Lydia was talking about. And they're a bigger group probably, and those are the people that are going to be electing Don Bolduc possibly tonight.
Well, I mean, but if Don Bolduc, and I'm guessing if Bolduc wins in New Hampshire, the Senate goes to the Republicans. Mitch McConnell said in February of last year, no hearings. If I don't forget, what happened to Merrick Garland as nominee. Yeah. If they're not moderate, whatever moderate means to Mitch McConnell, we'll go 2 years without confirming a judge. Forget justices of the Supreme Court. Yeah. If there's an open, that's pretty scary stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of how it worked even before Donald Trump. Yeah. But yes, they can stop everything Joe Biden wants to do in its tracks.
Right, and also, if Marjorie Taylor Greene has as much power as I think she will, she said the other day, no funding for Ukraine. This is pretty scary stuff. In any case, let's go from hearing from Barack Obama to a guy who's about to make a big announcement a week from tonight. Here he is.
I'm going to be making a very big announcement on Tuesday, November 15th, at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida.
We didn't add the music, by the way. I want to be clear. That was a 2-year campaign, if he announces next week. 8 months longer, I did the math before the show, than the last time he ran. You're a big-time lawyer in your former life. Merrick Garland is apparently reaching a critical stage, according to his former professor, Larry Tribe. Critical stage of the investigation. How does the playing field change if the guy he's investigating and potentially indicting is a former president running for president yet again?
It doesn't.
It doesn't?
I'm sorry, I just don't think for most people, the average everyday person, that's a lot of time and thoughts about, and building up and building a case. Most people don't have the time or energy.
How about it for Merrick Garland in his office? Do you not think it changes the dynamic for him as to how and when he does what he does?
Maybe. Honestly, most people are wondering why he hasn't done more now. I mean, at this point, it seems like you've had what you need. You've got the videos. You've so on and so forth. Like, get to it. So a lot of people are really wondering if there is something else to produce at this point. I mean, I'm hopeful, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't think that impacts.
If he is indicted, and I operate on the assumption that he will be, I'm not sure when. Do you worry about the violence that you've written about on the editorial page of the Boston Globe?
I mean, I think you have to worry about it no matter what. It's become sort of a terrible subtext for American political life these days. I'm not so sure he'll be indicted, though. I think that's an open question.
Why do you say that?
I mean, I'm not completely familiar with all the investigations, but there's many of them, and one of them was in New York, and there was a sense that it just might not happen. Maybe the more powerful cases in Atlanta, but I think they've got a long way to go to really have an indictable case. That doesn't mean that they won't come out with very damaging reports that detail shenanigans by the Republican Party at Donald Trump's
After watching
behest.
January 6th, do you worry about how people feel about the justice system if there is no indictment of Donald Trump?
I'm sure there'll be great protests, from the left if he's not indicted, for sure. I doubt there'll be violence.
Can we talk about one other aspect of a Trump candidacy? We're about to be treated, I assume, to 2 years of what you used to do for a living and now do on the radio, and what you do for a living, enemies of the people, fake news. I think it's fair to say that most of the media was not prepared for that in 2016. Are they prepared for it in 2022?
Well, I think there's a lot of looking backwards. I think you have people like Margaret Sullivan, who was a great ombudsman, saying the media should have called Donald Trump a liar much sooner than they did. I do think that if he's not indicted, I would say Mar-a-Lago and January 6th, it's a terrible blow to what you think about the justice system, because it's just, okay, it works for rich people and doesn't work for anybody else. And all these investigations over and over again, what you're basically saying is you can do whatever you want and you can get away with it. I think that's a very depressing state of affairs for the United States.
Can we end on the press angle? Is the media, mainstream, responsible media, ready for Trump, the third iteration? Which I don't know if you agree, that I don't think we were ready for at all in 2016. Do you?
Yeah, I think they're. I mean, I don't know what being ready means, but they know what he's like, and he is what he is, and there will be few surprises, I imagine. So yeah, I think the press will be as ready as they can be.
Non-journalists want to finish this?
The press is going to do, and I hate to be cynical, the press is going to do what it does, and that's make money. And he makes press, and they'll do what it takes. So his ridiculousness, his nonsense, they gave him more wings and more energy than he ever should have, and did not hold him accountable enough, but it made them money. So that's my biggest concern. They're ready to make money.
Here's hoping you're wrong. Jim Braude, it's nice to see you.
Thank you.
Senator,
Thank
pleasure. You. Margery, I'll see you tomorrow at 11 o'clock.
Sounds good.
Thank you all. Next up, we're continuing our series on the restaurants deemed worthy of 5 stars from the Boston Globe with Ostra. Back Bay Mediterranean seafood restaurant offers dining that the Globe describes as, quote, elegant and lively. The sophisticated seafood restaurant the city requires. I required it Sunday night when I went. The menu includes salmon tartare, salt-crusted branzino, paella valenciana, I hope I got the right style, and of course, perfect oysters. I'm joined by Ostra's chef-owner, Jamie Mammano, who's not a new kid in town with legendary spots like Mistral, Sorolina, and Moo. I think there are 3 of them now on his resume. Jamie, it's great to see you.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Pleasure. The first 2 5-star restaurants, I had the owners in. Cassie Puma from Sarma.
Yes,
and
fabulous.
Rachel Miller from Lynn's Nightshade Noodle Bar. Both first-time restaurant owners. Not for you. 25 years ago in Mistral. How's the industry different today from when it was when you opened that place?
Let's see. Certainly much more challenging post-COVID. A lot of exodus from the industry, but we've been very fortunate. We built a team over the 25 years that we've been very fortunate to keep a vast majority. So I think we're luckier than most. I think we just fell in a good spot there.
Now, a friend of mine told me you got your start at this place called Maidstone Country Club in East Hampton, making omelets on the beach. And that guy who told me said that Maidstone makes the country club in Brookline look like Canopy Lake Park. So is that a fair description of?
I wouldn't go that far, but they're both incredible spots. But yes, I worked there. I went to high school in East Hampton, New York, and worked there one summer making omelets on the beach.
And when you're doing that on the beach, are you saying to yourself, this is the right thing? I don't mean the omelet making, but the food thing is what I should be doing with myself. Was that the inspiration, or was it something else?
Actually, I know I was going to be a chef prior to that. I started washing dishes when I was 15, so at that point, I never left the kitchen. So don't ask me to do anything else besides cook or be working in the kitchen. I'd be lost. I'd be certainly unable to do anything else.
Okay, so Mistral Moo, best steak I've had in Boston, by the way, too. We're not talking about that tonight.
Thank you.
Ostra, it's not exactly casual dining in a time of casual dining. So what's the common thread through all of the Mammano places, spots?
Let's see. We just wanted to open the best we possibly could of each one of the concepts. And that's as simple as that. My business partner, Paul Rife, is a real estate developer, and we've worked together for 25 years. And there's a very, very high attention to detail, and we want to open the best of the best. And we just try to do that. Speaking of best of the best, someone told me your motto is "Perfect will be just fine." Thank you. Is that correct? That is correct. What does that mean? Is it as obvious as it sounds on the surface? Pretty much. Let's do the best we can without screwing it up. Are you tough? I've become a little bit of soft. I used to be a little more criminal one in the kitchen, but I'm okay now.
So, like, have you watched The Bear? Like everybody, have you watched?
I have.
The Bear? Were you when you were young and irresponsible?
Probably
was
when
that
I was
you?
probably in my early 20s.
But you've
mid-20s.
mellowed a lot in the later.
Yeah, kind of no choice.
Okay, fine. Can we eat a little bit? Something?
Of course we can.
Okay, now Joanne Chang used to work for you. Is that correct?
She was the opening pastry chef from Mistral. Yes.
Do you think she had any potential in, or not really?
Oh, she was fabulous, and she told me 22 years ago. She goes, "Chef, I'm going to leave." I said, "Oh no, really?" And she goes, "Yeah, I'm going to open this little bakery on Washington Street." I said, "Oh, let's go take a look at it." She said, "You're crazy. It's a terrible location. Forget about it." I was like, I felt bad for her. I was like, "Oh, Joe, whatever you want to do, go ahead and do it."
Whatever happened to her, by the way?
I became the most successful pastry baker in North America, and a dozen or 10 flour bakeries. And every time I see Joanne, I say, "Just yes, Joe."
Not a bad husband either. So her...
He's tolerable.
She says work backwards at the meal. That is a dessert, correct?
That's what you walk into flour baker, says eat dessert first.
Okay,
so
what's that thing?
That is an egg meringue filled with lemon curd with a basil sauce, fresh raspberries. You may.
I may?
Yes.
And whoops.
She shatters. You got to get the lemon stuff in there.
I got it. I'm getting there. Hold on. So while I'm doing this... Oh, my God. What's the green stuff?
Basil
Yikes.
syrup, yes.
That is unbelievable. By the way, one of the things I really liked when I was there Sunday night, I don't know if it's a big deal, having olive oil and butter, not either or, is a big deal to a consumer like me.
Well, we don't want to spend the time, hey, I like my butter out of my olive oil.
Yeah.
Just get it out of the way early. Just do both.
Okay, so, by the way, I was going to ask you about that. I was instructed by my coworkers to look at this and don't even come close to touching it. So what is it exactly?
That is a whole bass, Mediterranean bass, bacon and salt crust. Takes about 50 minutes. You order it. We assemble it to order. We bring it out to the table 55 minutes later, hopefully, and we break it. We break it apart table side. We fillet the fish. Goes on a plate. Olive oil, lemon, herbs. It's delicious.
I'm not going to do. If I were to violate the edict from my coworkers, then what would happen to me?
I mean, the salt might kill you if you eat that much salt, but I would
Other than that, it'd be fine.
Yes.
Well, what I am allowed to eat is, what is this thing here?
That is a bass tartare.
Okay, can I try that?
Of course you can.
Okay, can I just do it with a fork?
You can do whatever you wish.
Well,
You're the boss.
Would you like me to do it with a...
You're the boss.
But are you going to talk about me when you go home if I eat it with a fork?
No, not at all.
Oh, fine, okay. I'm going to try this. Tell me what it is one more time.
That is a freshly cut bass.
Oh, my God.
You make a fresh truffle aioli.
Oh.
And just toss it, and fresh truffles on top. Fancy fish tartare.
I made that at home last night. It was fabulous, by the way.
Can't be as good as that.
I didn't make it at home last night.
No.
Now, I don't want to make you feel bad. This is all, it really is spectacular.
Nothing you can say make me feel bad.
The thing, yeah, I think it will. The thing, I was a little upset. I really like smoked salmon, like big time. And
we've got a good one.
You have one here?
We do.
You do?
Look
who's here, Ho-Shang, who is, I believe,
Ho-Shang
the general
Dandris,
manager.
the big kahuna.
How are you,
Runs the
Ho-Shang?
show.
Nice to see
How are
you.
you? Nice to
Thank
see
you
you.
for coming.
Of course,
Pleasure.
thanks
What
for
is that
having us.
thing?
This is our salmon tartare, smoked to order. We have
my God.
creme fraiche and Siberian Reserve caviar for you.
That is
right on
gorgeous. Am I supposed to dip one of those
That's the
babies?
toasted brioche,
Would you mind
yes.
handing me the thing, or what's that
Not at all.
deal? Thank
By all
you.
means, please.
I mean,
that's
thank
his
you.
job.
Thank
I'm the
you.
back of the house guy, but that's fine. That's his job.
Okay, so I take this and I...
Well, I'd fork it.
Oh, I fork onto my thing?
I'd fork it, the caviar, get a little caviar. And
Fork it. Okay, I'm forking it like this?
Fork it, yes.
Fork it onto
Fork
this.
it on that, yep.
How is he to work for, by the way, Ho-Shang? How is he
Nice.
to work for?
You're
He's
on
great.
camera.
He is?
He's great.
Is he
Exactly
not?
what he
hesitation in
said.
his voice.
Excuse me, am I talking to him or am I
Sorry,
talking
my
to you?
apologies. Go ahead.
Is he, how is he to work for?
He's
It's
he
a
helps.
long pause, my friend.
No, what I love about it is,
What is
you
it?
know, perfect will be just fine. Makes everybody else pursue that too. So
I don't know
it's
if you
great
know,
to work for
perfect
him.
will be just fine, thank you. You ever heard that before?
A lot.
I had a feeling you... Let me,
It's
can
in
I try
the
this while
kitchen
you
at
two are
Ostra,
talking?
yes, of course.
Oh, that is just
It's good.
unbelievable.
good.
The smoking deal and the whole kind of thing. You know, the service, I was there and started with my mouth
No,
full.
of course.
But I was there Sunday night, and I was saying to Jamie before we started, I think I'm like most customers. You want staff to be attentive, but not too attentive. And you really do reach that perfect balance. I assume that comes from you.
I think it comes from the ownership. But yeah, we try to go, you know, there's a fine line between professionalism and friendly, and I think the staff has learned to walk that line really well.
How long have you been there?
At Ostra, 5 years. But
And you
the
were with him
company
before,
for-
summer before?
Yeah, 16 years actually.
That's amazing.
Started at Teatro.
You did?
Yeah.
This is really what?
Wow, really?
16 years, Joe.
Can you have that conversation somewhere else after the show?
Sorry, yes,
Because we're sort of doing this here. So you don't have to go away, Ho-Sheng. Thank you for coming in.
Of course.
I was going to ask you what your next act is, but my understanding is your next act, which is odd considering chips is what I understand. Is that the next thing for you?
It's not next. We've been doing it for 11 years.
And what are they called again?
Menina tortilla chips.
But I'm told by a friend of yours, again, that they're about to explode on the scene. What makes them different from what came before?
Well, nothing came before. We just got involved with it about 11 years ago. We opened a tortilla bakery at Feld in Chelsea, and we decided day-old tortillas. We cut them up, fried them, and we brought them to Whole Foods about 8 years ago. They started buying them. Now we're national.
But why are they better than the rest, I guess, is for those of us who like chips? We make them
because we didn't know any better. We just made them like we thought they were supposed to be made, and apparently it's the very expensive way to do it, and we do it the way they made them, I guess, in Mexico 200 years ago.
How are the chips?
Delicious.
Would you say that if he wasn't here?
Of course.
Unbelievable. Well, congratulations on your 5.
boy.
He is a good guy?
He's pretty good.
Yeah, he dresses pretty
Yeah,
nicely,
one of
too,
reason.
you know what I mean? Ho-Sheng, thank you for
Pleasure
bringing the
meeting you.
smoked
Thank you
salmon.
so much.
Jamie, congratulations
Thank you, sir. I really
on
appreciate
5
it.
stars.
Thank you very much.
Good guy and great restaurants. Jamie Mammano. That's it for tonight. Please come back tomorrow. We'll dissect these election results and what they mean for Massachusetts and the country. We'll also get an inside look at Frontline's new unresolved exhibit in Boston. The installation uses AI to tell the stories of unsolved cold case murders dating back to the civil rights era. That and more tomorrow at 7. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget Ukraine.
Wait, did I just commit a crime? Hey folks, I'm Edgar B. Harwick III from GBH's Curiosity Desk, where you ask questions and I find answers. Today's question comes courtesy of Betty Davis from Gloucester, Massachusetts, who wants to know, is it in fact a crime to remove these labels? Now, you find these guys on pillows, mattresses, even a lot of winter coats, and the reason why is because you cannot see what is inside of those items. Now, today, pillows, for example, are usually stuffed with feathers or cotton or some kind of synthetic material. But according to Maggie Terry, back in the day, they put some pretty gnarly stuff in the stuffing.
I mean, it used to be years ago, they'd throw anything they wanted to into the bedding. Newspapers, dirty rags.
Horsehair, used hospital or hotel mattresses, corn husks.
Sweepings off the floor, part of their lunches, droppings, I mean, anything.
For starters, that's disgusting, and furthermore, it's dangerous and unhealthy. So today, a lot of states require these labels that tell you what is inside of the item, and it is against the law to remove them. Sort of. Retailers and manufacturers can be fined if they remove the labels, but once you buy it or I buy it, if you read closely, most of these end with the line, "except by the consumer." So there you have it. Feel free to rip away. Don't forget to follow and tell us what you are curious about, because hey, I might just look into it for you. I'm Edgar B. Harwick III. Stay curious out there.